And we are going to go ahead and call this school board workshop to order. And before we get started, I would like to announce that Mr. Destin and myself are present here at the meeting, and on the phone, Ms. Ivanchek, Dr. Kelly, and Dr. White. And also in attendance is Mr. Chambers, the superintendent, and Mr. McInnes, the school board attorney. Also in the audience, we do have Steve Horton and Rita Scallon, and we also have Tammy Ellis and Dr. Bill Smith, who are in the green room if there's any questions for any of their agenda items. So with that being said, we'll go down and we'll go to 2.1 will be changes to the agenda and approval of the agenda. Section 3, recognitions. 3.1, recognition of the Peggy Gourday Bruner Award finalist and announcements of the recipient. Mr. Chambers, any comments you'd like to make on this particular item?
So I would like to thank the board for helping us get to the point where we are today. As you know, on Monday, we will have each of the award finalists. We'll have a little presentation to the board, which I think will be very nice. We'll have the overall winner. The overall winner will come about on Monday. But also in the paper today, you would have seen, or you will see later, where there's a spread in there for the Auntie Mitchell Award winners from each and every school. So every student who's an Auntie Mitchell Award recipient, they are in the paper. There's quotes from the principals as well, and each of the finalists are in there additionally. So we're excited to be able to put that out to honor these students. So it's a big deal. And then on Monday, of course, the overall winner will be awarded.
Yeah, I noticed yesterday that schools were passing out the certificates, and cause I saw on Facebook where some of the students were showing off their certificate and all. So I think it's awesome that we're going to do this in the forum that we're going to do on Monday night. So, all right. So we'll move down to visitors. We have none. Administrative personnel appointments, we have none. Oh, thank you. Our school board meeting will not be Monday night. It will be Tuesday night for the Memorial Day holiday. So thank you. Public comment 6.1, members of the public desiring to address the school board. And then we got Section 7, committee and staff reports, in-county travel paid for the period of April 24th through May 7th, 2020. And now we'll move down to the consent agenda. 8.1 will be the approval of the consent agenda. 8.2, approval of the minutes of the workshop meeting of May 7th, 2020, minutes of regular meeting of May 11th, 2020. 8.3, appropriation of District 1 School Board member capital outlay funds to Shalimar Elementary School for a sound system in the amount of $5,000, presented by Dr. Lamar White. 8.4, appropriation of District 2 School Board member capital outlay funds to Bruner Middle School for lockers in the amount of $10,693, presented by Mr. Dewey Destin. 8.5, appropriation of District 3 School Board member capital outlay funds to Lewis School for hallway flooring in the amount of $6,721.97, presented by Ms. Linda Ivanchek. 8.6, appropriation of District 4 School Board member capital outlay funds to Riverside Elementary School for Chromebooks in the amount of $8,122.75, presented by myself. And 8.7, request to advertise a public hearing for adoption of the 2020-2021 Code of Student Conduct, Elementary and Secondary, presented by Brian Humphrey.
Chairman, are there any, and the superintendent, I suppose, or Mr. Horton, are there any significant changes to this at all? I looked on the little blurb and it didn't look, there was one mentioned though.
Mr. McInnes will respond.
I don't believe there are any material changes there. There were a couple of corrections made to it. Dates obviously changed. There were a couple of citations that I updated. I don't remember, though, Mr. Destin, any material textual changes.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right. So we'll move down to 8.8, budget amendment number 8, fiscal year 2019-2020, presented by Rita Scallon.
Chairman, if I may, it appears that there were a number of savings there. related to school buses and a couple of other things. Is that correct, Ms. Scanlon? Or at least we didn't spend as much as we had budgeted?
Yes, sir. And that's anticipated till the end of the year.
Yeah, that was, what, 500,000? It was a pretty good amount, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, as far as the gas, fuel, that kind of
Right,
thing,
right.
I think it was a little bit less than that because, personnel are still being paid and everything.
Right.
Well, at least that's a slight benefit that we have realized we're not spending that money, but
Yes.
that'll change when we go back to school, hopefully.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Scallon. Thank you, Mr. Destin. Okay, 8.9, monthly financial statement for April 2020, presented by Rita Scallon. 8.10, invoices to be approved for payment. 8.11, payroll warrant register and accounts payable warrant register for April 2020 totaling $24,333,652.24, and bank transfers for April 2020 totaling $5 million. 8.12, tag on bid purchase over $25,000, Charon Sports Services Limited. 8.13, tag on bid purchase over $25,000, Apple Incorporated. 8.14, renewal of ITB 17-F-226, ramp systems and star systems. 8.15, renewal of ITB 17-03, fire extinguishers and kitchen hood systems inspection, maintenance and repair. 8.16, renewal of ITQ 2540-MST, locker purchase and service. 8.17, renewal of tag-on bid ITB 17C-65K, term contract for repair, motorized and refurbished bleachers and basketball backstops. 8.18, extension of contract Jackson Therapy Partners, LLC, and Career Staff Unlimited.
Chairman, if I might, and unless there's a mistake on the dates, the next three all look like they're extensions of contracts for 30 days. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. These are just extensions through the end of this school year. It worked out that when you originally approved them, we needed to add this additional time to get the services available to students through the end of the year. These are not the renewals for next year.
Right. Do we anticipate these contractors are going to be available for next year? Or do we see any problems there?
For next year in terms of the next school year?
Right.
So to date, we do not see that'll be a problem, but of course, as we get through into the summer, who knows, but right now, we do not anticipate that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so 8.19, extension of contract Invo Healthcare. 8.20, extension of contracts Career Staff Unlimited, Innovative Employee Solutions Incorporated, Princeton Staffing Solutions, and Sunbelt Staffing. 8.21, charter bus agreement for Phoenix Bus Incorporated. 8.22, extension of agreement for employee benefits brokerage services with FBMC Benefits Management Incorporated.
I've not been able to talk to Mr. Frakes, but what we call that BOG committee, the ones that make this recommendation,
Yes.
I didn't see any documentation of discussion or how the vote went, if there was a vote. Do we have any of that?
I'll get with Dr. Hale and make sure that he gets that answer out.
Just curious about what they had to say in a little more detail about it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. 8.23, joint use agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and Destin Water Users, presented by Dr. Bill Smith. And Mr. Chambers, I asked Dr. Smith to be here this morning, so if we can have him come in real quick, I'd like him just to explain what this is and why we are doing this, and just kind of moving toward the future of.
Yeah, and it's also under construction management, so it'll be good to.
Absolutely. He
Have
should
him
be en
tell
route
us.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured we'd go ahead and do it now, and let him get back to work. So we're pausing just for a few minutes to have Dr. Smith come. Good morning, Dr. Smith.
Good morning.
Now, we are 8.23. I know you were down on construction business, but we figured we'd go ahead and let you explain what the joint use agreement is and talking about reclaimed water.
This is an agreement that Mr. McInnes and I have been working on about a year. It's an agreement with the Destin water users and also with the city of Destin to where they will use reclaimed water on our property that is being used under another joint use agreement by the city of Destin, which is the soccer field with the track around it and the 2 baseball fields. Reclaimed water is already being used at the Morgan Sports Complex. It's a process to where you get rid of the water versus having these big gigantic spray fields that you used to see around the county. It's just a better process. We already use it at the Twin Oaks Complex, been using it for about 15 years up there.
And the safety part of this is, there's no safety hazards or anything like that.
It has about a 25 or 30 year record of use, and it hasn't really been any problems. We use it on golf courses all over the country,
Right.
and there doesn't seem to be any problems with it at all.
And Mr. Bryan, I would offer that it is regulated by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and they
Right.
have to issue permits and licenses for these sites, as I understand it.
Right.
So Destin water users will be getting all the appropriate permits to do this.
Right.
The state of Florida has actually been a leader, I think, across the country in the use and processing of reclaimed water. So this is not a new thing at all for
Right.
the state or even in this
Right.
county.
Well, and the reason, for public information, of course, when you hear reclaim, of course, that will probably send up some red flags to people. And this is just an education part of why we are doing this agreement and explaining to the general public that this is not something that's new and that it's actually a trend that's going across nationwide. So, and the fact that there is government regulation in it and all.
When they get started doing this at that complex, you'll see some significant construction work done there because it's required that this water be in purple pipe. It can't be in white pipe. So it'll have to all be dug up. The irrigation will all have to completely be done. Some of the pipe will actually be put about 2 feet in the ground in a drip system to where when we have more water they need to get rid of, they can without running a sprinkler. So you're going to see some significant digging and some significant improvement of those fields when they put them back in place.
Okay.
And I might point out, we also checked some other municipalities around the area, and Gulf Breeze, and several are using it.
Right.
And the
It's the-
drip
it's-
system that Dr. Smith talks about is a big improvement because you're not spraying it.
Right.
And according to water users, the water is actually clean enough to drink should you so choose, although we do not suggest that.
Right. And I think you told me on the phone the chlorine levels are pretty significant too. So,
It's what they call superchlorinated. One of the
Right.
reasons they want to throw it up in the air is because the sun will dispense a lot of that.
right.
So
Okay. All right.
And I would say that the particular water this agreement allows to be used is what's classified by DEP as public access reclaimed water. And so that's the level of clarity this water will have.
All right. So, board members on the phone, Ms. Vancheck, any comments for Dr. Smith while he's up here, or any questions?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
None at this time, thank you.
Okay, and Dr. White?
No, Chairman Bryan, I spoke with Dr. Smith extensively yesterday regarding this matter, and I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. White. Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Appreciate all that you're doing. Okay, so we'll go down to 8.24, and that's sale and disposal of surplus property. 8.25, cooperative agreement between Florida Diagnostic Learning Resource Systems, Fiddlers, FDOE, discretionary project, and Escambia, Santa Rosa, and Okaloosa counties. 8.26, Summer Voluntary Pre-Kindergarten Program for 2020. And,
I have a question of Mr. Chambers.
okay, Mr. Vanchek?
Yeah, Mr. Chambers, I know this is the pre-K program, which is great. Have we, I'm sure the district is starting to look at different summer school programs, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So
We haven't really been given that information quite yet. Is that right?
that is correct. So we are finalizing right now, but I will say as it stands currently, like for example, 8.26 is here. It's a contingent matter. If we are able to move forward into the summer, we will. What we are planning for in terms of summer school right now is a virtual summer school with a different model, and that's still being fleshed out and will be finalized here this week. We have spoken to principals about what that could look like, but right now with the uncertainty of being able to bring large numbers to campuses, it'd be difficult to do a full-scale summer school. So we are looking at doing a virtual summer school in order to meet the needs of students.
And are you looking at that on the elementary level as well as secondary?
Yes, ma'am. And I would say, in addition, what we are creating right now for math and language arts is we're creating a GAP program, and that would be for all students to be able to utilize over the course of the summer. I think, as you know, the last 9 weeks we've done an online model, and our teachers and students and staff have done a great job. But we are creating a GAP program where we'll hit standards by grade level of the last 9 weeks, so they can work on it over the summer and be as ready as we possibly can be for the start of the next school year. In addition, each of the schools in their school performance plan will create a GAP remediation program as well at the start of next school year to remediate students and bring them up to speed as quickly as possible. So next year, they will start with those standards as appropriate for that grade level, but they will also be paying very much attention to the previous 9 weeks standards to make sure that we fill those gaps.
So your plan that you think about, that you think is going to happen at this time, or you're planning, that would employ some teachers, correct?
For summer school, it would employ some teachers, but the model would look different than it has in the past. But yes, there would be teachers that would be employed in this model.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would just like to add, I know the guidelines that we received recently from the Florida School Board Association, which I think were actually put together by the Association of School Psychologists. I think this would be a good piece or something similar to give to parents. It was their guidelines, and actually the title is to retain or not to retain. And of course, I think that, as you all know, communication with parents right now would do a whole lot to alleviate some of their concerns or fears about what might happen to their students for the next year going forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. White, any comments?
No, sir. I have a relevant comment, but I'll just save it when we come to board members' business.
Okay, thank you, Dr. White. Okay, so we'll move to item 8.27, and that's the articulation agreement between School Board of Okaloosa County and University of Northwestern Ohio to provide college credit for CTE automotive maintenance and light repair courses taken in high school. Okay, so now we'll move down to Superintendent's Human Resource Recommendations and 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave. Just so you know, school board members, item 9.2 is usually just an informational, but at Tuesday's meeting, this will actually be a voted item, so the extended drop. And Mr. Chambers, would you like to talk about this particular item?
Absolutely. So this extended drop is different from the drop that we've had in the past, which would allow an employee to be with us another school year. So this drop extension is specifically to employees once the school year begins, and if their drop date is within that school year. This would allow them the ability to finish out that school year and that school year only. I think especially with where we are right now in this pandemic, and as we already know, there's a teacher shortage, for example, just across the nation. I think this would be something that would allow us to keep some of our fantastic teachers, finish out the school year. There'd be less disruption for students. So I think this is a good thing. I am in full support of it, and that's what's before you.
Okay. So if there's any comments, I'm going to start with Mr. Destin. Any comments regarding this particular item?
I understand we have authority under state law to do this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Ivanchek?
Yes, sir. I want to commend the superintendent and his staff for going with this program. I think everybody benefits. The drop is, given to us from the state to allow our good teachers to continue. The state allows it for years, but I appreciate this modified agreement getting us back to this. We had the drop several years ago, and I'm glad to see that it's coming back. I'm hoping in the future we can move back to where we allow those teachers to go longer, like for the years that are allowed, because it was set up to keep those good teachers in the classroom, and we certainly have a lot of those that we could continue to use and to benefit for our district. But I appreciate that Mr. Chambers and the district is moving forward for this, and so thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Dr. Kelly?
None at this time. Thank you.
Dr. White?
No, sir, no comment.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Hale is in attendance at this time, so the following items in Section 9, if you have any questions for Dr. Hale, just please stop me and we'll let him come up to the podium. So we're at 9.3, instructional and educational support personnel recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year. 9.4, employment separations.
I did have a question on 9.3, sorry.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Destin.
These are any new positions and amongst these recommendations?
Go ahead.
Dr. Hale, if you would, please.
No, sir. These recommendations are just based on the performance from the teachers from this year and recommending them back for next year, associated with no new allocations, but allocations that are anticipated through the enrollment model right now. We've had a lot of extensive conversations at the district level about conservatism and caution right now, so we are not putting anything that would... Nothing new is going out there right now in terms of job positions, but the recommendations are based on performance and as they're, contractually for next year.
Thank you, Ms. Hale.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Destin and Mr. Horton, if you'd come forward as well. So I do want to reiterate what Dr. Hale just said. So we are making sure that we do take a conservative approach. Mr. Horton, as he has in the past, he does a great job of really looking at every school's allocation, every single one of them, and then he works with Ms. Scallon in terms of how many allocations actually go out, making sure that we're looking at FTE numbers, making sure that we're looking at every school's budget, and making sure that we keep in mind class size requirements. This year, we're being even a little bit more cautious, based on where we are. But Mr. Horton, if you just talk just a little bit about that, and then Rita, if you have anything after that, I would appreciate it if you'd speak as well.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chambers. So in assigning initial instructional allocations to the schools, despite the fact that we believe there at least potentially was going to be a slight increase in enrollment projected, and granted that was before COVID, we drew down on the number of instructional allocations that we planned for the upcoming year. It was fewer than what we had in place this year. So that would be the first thing. The second is, where hiring needs to occur, and there's clear evidence that it needs to occur. The challenge is we believe and expect that other school districts are hiring teachers as well now. Everyone has a level of uncertainty. What I am certain of is that the district is positioned to provide in-classroom instruction or virtual instruction, whichever the case may be. I think we have a strong district franchise for virtual. So as we begin and we're working right now with a survey for parents to try to get some guidance on their thoughts for next year as to whether the model ends up being in class, partly virtual, a combination of the two. We know we'll need teachers to teach students in either format. And so with caution right now, the superintendent has directed us to go out and work with schools in places where maybe they've lost 7 teachers through retirement or military PCSing out. And so there's a clear need for them to have some level of staff to be anywhere close to where they were last year. Those are some of the hirings that you'll see potentially happening as we move into June, because we are as a district competing with the other districts in Florida for a limited valuable resource, and that is our teachers. So we're watching it individually. I'm working with each principal as they make a request to advertise for position. We're taking a look at all the information that we have before approving that. And then all that's under the umbrella.
One thing there, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Horton, and sorry to interrupt. So we also spoke with some of our surrounding superintendents, and we also talked to them about the question, hiring. And one of the things that they are doing is if they do have a position that needs to be filled, they too are going to fill those positions. And I won't go further with what they're doing, but in terms of here, there'll be some positions that will be filled, but with a very cautious approach, such as an example that Mr. Horton just gave, where if we have a school through PCS or retirement where there's a number of positions, we might not hire all of them. And I know that principal will be very eager to want to hire every vacant position, and that won't necessarily happen, but we will have to fill some of those positions because we don't want to be behind the 8 ball as well. But we will be very cautious in our approach. I'm sorry, Mr. Horton, go ahead.
That covered it from my end.
Okay. Mr. Destin?
Oh, that answers my question.
Okay. We'll go down the line. Ms. Ivanchek, any questions or comments for Mr. Horton?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
No, thank you.
And Dr. White?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move down. 9.4, employment separations. 9.5, personnel recommendations. 9.6, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination. 9.7, employee suspension. And 9.8, leave without pay. So discussion agenda, items moved from the consent agenda, if any. And now we are to 11, construction program owners, representatives business, and 11.1, Mr. Destin.
Well, we are still pursuing the projects that we went over at the last meeting. And in addition, we have the kitchen that we're doing at Kenwood along the roof, basically. So, and the water issue, which Dr. Smith reviewed with us earlier. So that'll be the extent of my report.
Well, I know I live right near Davidson Middle School, and I was driving by the other day and noticing that the security fences are going up, and they're not wasting any time getting that done. So it's great to see, even though we don't have children in school, we are trying to get these safety measures, all of our construction projects caught up. If anything, I believe we're probably moving a lot quicker now that there's nobody in there. So.
Another very small silver lining to this dark cloud, we're able to get ahead on that, on those construction programs, since kids aren't there. So
right.
Hopefully we'll complete earlier than we anticipated.
Okay. We'll go down the line. Any questions or comments for Mr. Destin, Ms. Ivanchek?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
None, thank you.
Okay. Dr. White?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. 11.2 will be TPM program number 6, task order number 8, GMP, Kenwood Elementary School kitchen dining roof replacement. And then 12, we have nothing. Item 13, Mr. McInnes.
No, sir, just one item. The superintendent has received a letter from Terry Roberts, who's the president of Liza Jackson Preparatory School. And in accordance with the provisions of the newly renewed charter that you approved, they do need a formal permission to go forward with their construction program at a new site. Basically, the charter requires that if a charter school is going to change locations of facility, they have to notify the sponsor and seek permission to do that.
Okay.
And so, Monday night, we would just be asking the board to authorize the superintendent to return a letter to Liza Jackson Preparatory School approving them moving forward. Does not obligate you in any way for the construction or the cost. They just have to notify you as sponsor that facility is going to move.
Okay.
And the letter will, of course, require them to follow all of the statutory and charter provisions for the facilities as it's constructed.
Okay. And we did receive, all of us should have received an email yesterday regarding that
Yes, sir, I
letter.
believe you've all seen a copy of that
Yes.
letter.
Did all of, on the phone, did all of you receive the letter? Ms. Vancheck?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly?
Yeah.
Dr. White?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Destin? Okay.
And that is consistent with what that school presented to the board as they were doing the renewal. They let you know that they were heading into a proposed construction
Okay.
project.
So Tuesday night, under your business, we'll have to have a motion regarding this particular item.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Mr. McInnes?
That's it.
Okay. Superintendent business, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, sir. So I do want to share with the board, and and if you see fit, it might be good, and you probably have already done this, reaching out to some of our schools. As it pertains to, our schools are doing a great job right now, not only returning items to the students, such as items that were in their lockers, items that were in the classrooms, doing that in an organized fashion, following CDC guidelines, but they're also in the process of taking items back, such as textbooks, such as library books and devices, if in fact they are finished. And these return items are also being handled with CDC guidelines, where they might go into this box if they're a textbook, this box if they're a library book, in this box if they are one of the devices. And if they're one of the devices, they're being disinfected and sanitized in a completely different way, and then that'll go back eventually back out to students once everything is disinfected in terms of the next school year. So there's a lot going on at the schools right now in terms of that process. Also, just for your information, and you've probably already seen it anyway, is the virtual graduations, which is our insurance policy if in fact something were to change over the course of the summer with this pandemic. The virtual graduations are actually starting today. So we have Baker, I think, right now as we speak. They are going through their virtual graduation. Mr. Horton and his crew, they've really done a great job in helping us organize this. We made sure that we looked at every school's virtual graduation plan. So making sure, once again, we're following CDC guidelines. We have the Sheriff's Office who's helping us as well during this process. So at the end of this, what will happen is the production companies that have helped us, it will be put together into a full-scale graduation, so to speak. So I'm kind of excited to see what that will eventually look like. And then, as you know, the week of July 14th through the 18th is the time period that we will be looking at doing our graduations here in Okaloosa County. Currently, the way that we sit right now, there would be no more than 250 people in a large-scale gathering. So we're making sure that we follow the CDC guidelines of no more than 250. All students would be spaced out, as well as families would be spaced out as well. Some of our surrounding districts, they are also doing July as graduation dates, but there are at least one that I believe is doing it in a time period in later June. I think we thought it would be responsible to look at July, just the further we can get out. We'd love to have it on May 28th and 29th, but right now that's not a possibility. So we're excited about the plans that we have for graduation, and we know that we definitely want to honor our kids in the right way. Do want to let you know as well, I have instituted, in essence, what we're calling a back-to-school task force, and we'll be looking at making decisions as it pertains to next school year. So we've already pulled the CDC guidelines in terms of reopening schools. So we'll be going through that, as well as working on this task force, a number of district level employees. Mr. Bryant will also be somebody on this task force, and we will also do this in conjunction with making sure Karen Chapman understands what we're doing, and she would see this plan, as well as the sheriff as well. We do want to get some community input, but get community input in the right way. So this is going to be a big deal, as you know, looking at what school will look like. We have looked at research in terms of what's being put out right now across the nation in terms of students who might decide to stay in an online model. Some of you, in terms of board members, have also sent me some of that, which I appreciate. So we are taking into account what might school look like next year. We will be prepared to start school in August, just like we always have. We'll be prepared, but we'll also have a plan B in place. If we have to go to a virtual model, we'll be prepared to do so. If we have to go to a blended model, we'll be prepared to do so. But as you know, when you start thinking about what will transportation look like, what will a lunchroom look like, what would social distancing look like within the classroom. So these are some of the topics that this group will look at. So excited to get that going. And of course, as we go through this process, we'll make sure that we keep the board very much up to speed on where we are in this process.
Mr. Chambers, real quick on, you were talking about CDC guidelines, and from what I understand, I've seen out there on social media, there was a CDC supposedly guideline there. And just be clear on that. When we have the guidelines, that's not saying that's exactly how it has to be. Am I correct? Those are just recommendations. It will totally be up to the school district and the school board on how we will proceed with that. Am I?
And is that question pertaining to the start of the next school year?
Well, yes, in regards to what was floating around on social media yesterday. So,
I'm not as familiar with what was on social media yesterday.
There was some CDC guidelines that were out there. I don't know how true those were, if they were, how true they were, but it has obviously created some conversation. But what I'm getting at is the CDC guidelines. We interpret those as recommendations. Of course, we will be free to kind of determine what's going to be in the best interest of our school district, not necessarily what CDC says nationwide, because every district is going to, of course, different.
So I do believe.
Mr. Bryant.
Yes, sir.
Superintendent, if I might, just to share, I have asked Ms. Crawford to forward all of you, all the board members, and Mr. McInnes, you as well, and Superintendent, certainly you and your staff, a copy of the newest CDC guidelines that were released yesterday. And beginning on page 45, those are the things that are pertaining to the schools. And I just wanted to share that. If you haven't seen them, they'll soon be in your mailbox.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. White.
No, and I appreciate that as well, Dr. White. And that is something. So there's a number of guidelines that have come out. That being one of them. There are even athletic guidelines that have just come out. And actually, as I think the board would feel good to know that was a document that we did start looking at yesterday, and Ms. Lightbourne, as we speak, is looking at that document right now, literally as we speak, and that will be something that'll help guide our decisions. But I think as you were talking about, Mr. Bryan, I think across the country, depending on where you are, there might be more outbreaks of coronavirus than other areas. So we will be able to be more stringent than the guidelines if necessary. But I think we will make the decisions of what's best for our district. I think we'll be responsible to keep these guidelines definitely in mind, but decisions will still come to the board as well to be a part of this process, and we need you all to be a part of this process. But I do want to share with you that we are very much on top of these guidelines, very much wanting to make certain that we're being very collaborative. I also started yesterday we had our first started some conversations with some other superintendents in our region. You know, superintendents do a great job of speaking one-on-one. Thought it would be good to get the superintendents together to start talking about topics such as summer activities, such as the start of the school year, such as hiring. So we had a great meeting yesterday, and we'll continue those. I think that is good for us as well. But, you know, we will make decisions on what is best for Okaloosa County in conjunction with you, our school board.
I had one question, Superintendent. Have we invited Ms. Dr. Chapman to be an active participant on this group that you're forming?
Absolutely.
So she'll be a member?
Absolutely. I've already reached out to her and asked her that question, and the sheriff.
A wonderful idea. She's very, very competent.
She's been great, and throughout this whole process, we've stayed in good communication with her, because she's critical to what we're doing. But she will be an active member. Now, as she said to me, she will attend the meeting via Zoom.
Good idea.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Chambers?
That is it.
Okay. So we'll move down to school board members' announcements and requests for information. And Mr. Destin, I'll start with you.
I'm going to bring up an issue that probably may or may not be relevant, but depending on athletics in our system next fall. The Florida Association that governs athletics in our public schools has come out with some recommendations on heat prostration and what steps we can take to address it. We don't know whether we will have athletes that are even in the need for that, but it seems really simple. And I don't know if any of the staff have reviewed them. If in the first 40 minutes that an athlete would suffer, there's some interventions that are just simple as can be that make all the difference in the world. So I'll try to get together with the superintendent's staff, and we'll go over those to see how we could implement them. Some of them are as simple as having a vat and ice available at football practices or other practices. If you can get the student who's suffering from heat prostration into that, the recovery is just amazingly better. So, and that wouldn't be terribly expensive, I would think, for us to do. So we should explore that, and of course we'll only put it in place if it looks like we're actually going to have those kind of athletic activities. But I thought it was pretty significant because there have been a number of deaths throughout the country from heat prostration.
No, I'd very much want to see that, and I think what you'll see, Mr. Destin, will be that a lot of what you're probably reading in there we have in place.
We're doing it all right. That'll be good.
But definitely want to see that to make sure that we have everything in place that we need to.
Sounds good. That's all I have, Mr. Bryant.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Destin. Ms. Ivanchek, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, of course, Monday is Memorial Day, where we recognize those individuals who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And it's a national holiday, so there won't be any school, which takes on a different meaning than it has in the past. But I wanted to ask the superintendent, that will affect meal drop-off, correct?
For Memorial Day, it will affect the meal drop-off, and I want to make sure I say this correctly so Mr. Horton can come forward. But we prepared for that. On Friday, families will be able to pick up more than one meal on Friday to combat that Monday. And make sure I said that correctly, Mr. Horton.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And so we're planning a call out this evening to all the families in the school district, reminding them that Memorial Day, Monday's a holiday, so they would be able to pick up, instead of 2 meals, they'd be able to pick up 4 meals on Friday. And our food service folks are working overtime to get enough meals prepared for Friday to send those out. But we'll do the call out this evening to notify families of that. And I think that's all. And making sure we're providing the type of food that will last until Monday. There's certain guidelines, and so it will be food that will be prepared and able to be eaten Monday.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Horton. Ms. Ivanchek?
Yeah, okay, well, thank you. I just want to make sure that got out to the public because, like I said, with the way things are now, it may not be so obvious that Monday is a holiday. A couple more items, please. I was honored to, as the board's representative for the Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation, to participate in a food distribution that we co-sponsored with the United Way of Emerald Coast last Friday, and it was a terrific event. Helped a lot of people. Saw the need and was able to help with that. I was honored to represent the board with the foundation. Also, personally, really enjoyed the other day when the Air Force did the flyover at the medical personnel. I got to stand right there at the Fort Walton Beach Medical Center, and that was. I don't care how old you get or whatever. It's thrilling when you see those jets go over like that. It really fills you with a sense of pride, and I appreciate that they did that. As Mr. Chambers was speaking about virtual graduation, I literally got a text from Principal Martello up at Baker, the school I represent, and he was showing me the stage as they were beginning that. So we are off on our first experience of a virtual graduation, so that's exciting. Also was proud to and glad to help our school board staff, Jan and Mary, get the medals and everything together. I know several of us on the board worked on that last week to get those out. I know we all wish that we could personally hand those students their awards like we normally do, but I appreciate that the district came up with a great way to honor those students in a very nice package that we're going to be giving to them. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ivanchek. Dr. Kelly.
Just to say that I echo some of those same sentiments. It was truly an honor to help Jan and Mary prepare those packages to honor our students, but also really missing all of the bravado and all of the excitement and energy that we normally get to participate in this time of the year with all of the end-of-year activities at our schools and all the various things we do for students at all levels. While we've really been emphasizing our seniors, we accommodate students at all grade levels and give them accolades for their performances. So I truly miss that. I would also like to give a shout out to Dr. C's Foundation and the STEM Center for using their 3D technology for the benefit of others during this time. I think it was just a phenomenal life lesson for our students that they were able to go through that whole process of conceptualization of an item to the reiterations of the refinements to that item to the production on the 3D printers, and then through the generation of deciding what entities really needed those face shields during this time. So shout out to Dr. Sue and our STEM people for partnering in that effort. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Dr. White.
Thank you, Chairman Bryant. Well, of course, the one item that I was going to mention would be the CDC materials, and we've already talked about that. And the final thing I would say is that what a great advertisement in the Daily News today, Superintendent, that you and your staff put together, recognizing all of our outstanding students and for their many wonderful achievements. So I just wanted to say it was a beautiful 2-page spread, and it looks really good, and thanks for doing all that.
Thank you, sir.
All right. And my comments would be regarding the award ceremony for Monday night. Mr. Chambers, I appreciate you and Tuesday. Tuesday. But Mr. Chambers, I do appreciate you and myself and all the principals who personally signed these letters the other day, 480 something letters that we personally signed. But as Dr. White mentioned, the newspaper ad that's out there, I think something that we're learning from this moving forward is these are things that we might be able to continue to do, to even give some more recognition to the future. So I hope that we're looking at that. Future chairmans and future superintendents can take time to do the letter. If they choose to sign them, that would be up to them. But, I think adding that personal touch is definitely something that these students will remember. The newspaper ad is something that, even though we do videotape the awards, but having that newspaper ad there, for them to keep forever is something that I think would be kind of awesome to continue to do. But again, that will be up to whoever is in charge of the school district in the future, whether that be you or somebody else. But I think it's something we should continue to do. And I do, like I said, I appreciate our school board members who came and helped get everything together. Obviously, in these times, we do have to work together. And, and I'm very honored to be on a board that's working together to help ensure that our students have some type of great memories about this particular graduating class and moving forward. So I don't know how your hand is holding up, but because we've been signing a lot of stuff here lately. So
a lot of signatures.
Yes. Okay, so we'll move down to 16, and that's public comment. And then we do also have a public hearing at 6:15, and public hearing for the adoption of a new job description, behavior interventionist. Dr. Hale, would you like to kind of talk about this particular position real quick?
Yes, sir. And I want to apologize for my tardiness. There's a little technological lag between the when you say things here and when I was receiving in my office. So I do apologize for my missing a couple of
That's why I'm
items there.
calling you up right now. So
So the behavior interventionist, if you'll recall, we've discussed this a few times in the meeting. This is a job description that's put out there to help us fill a need that we had when we were not able to supply behavior analyst positions due to licensure and certification issues, and it's ultimately a lower level job description to get some people in place to perform those functions as we continue to seek building employees up to fill that behavior analyst position at some point. Those were positions that were very, very difficult to fill last year, and ultimately many went unhired. So this is just a step along that path, and it's going to create some opportunities for some other people, and also satisfy some of the needs of our ESC department that we need.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hale.
Just one question, Dr. Hale.
Yes, sir.
Some of these positions have come about due to the evaluations the state gave us. And is this going to be I take it you're telling us it's a stopgap till we can get the certifications we're looking for. Do we feel that this is going to be acceptable to the state who made recommendations that were a little more specific?
Yes, sir, I do believe so. I can tell you that the ESE department worked very closely with my department in formulating these job descriptions to satisfy the needs that were detailed by that visiting group. So I have every confidence that it will do just that.
Thanks.
And I'd add one thing to it. So this position right here would be someone who's working towards getting their behavior analyst certification. So we have some who come out of college who have certain pieces of the criteria that they need, but then they have to go on for extended college coursework. So this would allow us to get those individuals who are already under the training, and they're going to continue their training towards behavior analysts, but to be able to get them in here to really help our students.
Does it say that in the job description?
That I don't know.
Say what specifically, sir?
That they're required to be working toward those certifications?
I don't know if it's a directive. That the expectation is within the job description that it is a provision so that they can obtain that behavior analyst, but I don't know exactly what the words say specifically.
I didn't see it in the description. Should
Right,
it
so
be in there?
I will revisit that. I will revisit that.
I think
Look at
that's
that issue.
I think that's something that we can look at. Now I know this is a job description in it of itself, and then of course behavior analyst is a job description in it of itself. So I'd probably want to talk to Mr. McGinnis a little bit more about that in terms of putting a provision in there of an expectation going forward. But I think it's a good point. We can look at that. But I am sharing with you that this is a measure to get a qualified behavior interventionist that is one step below the behavior analyst.
Well, this person will be, I take it, under the same kind of contract we give instructors, since it says instructional personnel is the pay salary?
Yes, sir. That is true. And to Mr. Chambers' point as well, there is an internal incentive inside this job description, which we'll look at the language as he said, but this is not paid to the same degree that the behavior analyst is. So the incentive to increase and to continue moving on would be in that form as well. Right. But yes, it is on the instructional salary schedule.
And the only observation I would make is, if it's possible and legal, to put that in the job description or in the contract, it probably would behoove us to do it so there won't be any confusion and we'll end up talking about settlements like we did earlier this morning.
Gotcha.
Well, and my comment, the way I was interpreted is that, like you said, this is not the same as the position ahead of that. This is getting them into that position, kind of like on-the-job training, helping them to achieve that degree to get to the next level. So I think we're talking about two different job descriptions here. So I don't know if necessarily we have to go that way. I understand where he's coming from, but but if it's just a whole new job description for a totally different job, I mean.
And Mr. Destin, my memory is I think that we've already had some conversations like that about the first category of the minimum eligibility requirements here. I can get back with Ms. Maxey, but I believe we already had discussions about whether or not it was appropriate to put a requirement in there that they were completing coursework, or as the chairman was saying, this is a separate position that would allow someone to earn their way into a higher position. And I just need to get back with her to go back over that. But I think we had those conversations and made a decision that was not a requirement of the job to do that, but this was an opportunity. This job would allow someone to do that. But I'll get back with her about that.
Yep. Well, of course, it is a separate description, but
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're going on the assumption pretty clearly from this discussion that that person is going to be going forward to try to be certified so they can go to the next step. And if that's not the intention, is that the person we want to hire, would make it quite
Exactly.
clear by putting it in even a description. So I'll give it some thought. We don't want to do anything that's not legal, but if we're not going to get the folks that are going to go forward to the certification, then it's ultimately not going to solve our problem.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Destin. Ms. Ivanchek, any comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
No, thank you.
Okay, Dr. White?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, well, hearing none, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.